I already proved, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that Tony Stark was the architect of his own torment. That his genius, his ego, his relentless need to build a better suit of armor around the world, directly created every major villain he ever faced in the Infinity Saga. Obadiah Stane, Whiplash, Ultron, Vulture, Mysterio. They were all ghosts of Tony's past, mistakes given form and fury. But here's the terrifying truth that reshapes everything we think we know about the MCU. Tony Stark's story didn't end with a snap. His mistakes didn't die on that battlefield. In fact, Tony Stark, even dead and buried, is the single most influential force behind every catastrophic threat in Phase 4, Phase 5, and beyond. His fingerprints are on the Scarlet Witch's grief, on Kang's infinite tyranny, on the chaos Kingpin rules, and on horrors yet to come. The MCU isn't moving on from Tony Stark. It's drowning in the devastating consequences of his legacy. And today, I'm connecting the dots to show you the dark, undeniable proof. Let's start with the most heartbreaking and direct line from Tony's workshop to outright villainy. Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch. Her descent into darkness in Multiverse of Madness is a direct, linear consequence of Tony Stark's actions, a chain reaction he set in motion years before. Step 1. Tony, alongside Bruce Banner, created Vision. They built a synthetic body and powered it with the Mind Stone. This act of creation gave Wanda her only source of true, stable happiness after the death of her brother. Vision was her anchor. Step 2. Tony's earlier creation, Ultron, led directly to the Sokovia Accords. The Sokovia Accords, in turn, shattered the Avengers. A united Avengers might have stopped Thanos on Titan, or on Wakanda before he ever reached Vision. But they were divided, weakened by the schism Tony helped engineer. This division led to Vision's death, as he was sacrificed to stop the Mad Titan. Step 3. The final choice. Tony's snap. With the power of all 6 Infinity Stones in his gauntlet, Tony chose to vanquish Thanos and his army. He could have, in theory, wished for a full restoration, for everyone lost, including Vision, to be returned. But he didn't. Vision stayed dead. So, we have the equation. Tony created the being Wanda loved. Tony's actions created the conditions that led to that being's death. Tony's final act did not reverse that death. Wanda's immeasurable grief, twisted by the Darkhold, created the Scarlet Witch. The through line is devastatingly clear. No Tony Stark, no Ultron, no Sokovia Accords. No Accords, a united Avengers potentially stops Thanos earlier. Thanos stopped, Vision lives. Vision lives, Wanda doesn't become a universe-breaking villain. Tony's legacy isn't just the suit, it's the Hex. But the damage isn't confined to cosmic-powered witches. It infiltrates the very symbol of American heroism. Look at John Walker, the tragic, violent US agent from The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. His brutal downfall is a product of the Stark legacy in 2 profound ways. First, the symbol. Tony Stark, through the Civil War, made Captain America a controversial figure. But Steve Rogers' final sacrifice in Endgame transformed him from a man into a myth, an untouchable legend. The US government, desperate to control that symbolic power, needed a new, compliant Captain America. They created John Walker, but second, and more critically, the substance. The super soldier serum itself is a Stark family heirloom. Howard Stark, Tony's father, was instrumental in the original Erskine formula. Every attempt to replicate it, from Emil Blonsky to the leader to the Red Hulk, stems from that foundational Stark research. The Power Broker's serum that Walker takes is just another branch on the twisted tree planted by Howard Stark and tended by the shadow of his son's world. The government wanted to recreate Captain America, but all they had to work with was the volatile, dangerous science the Starks left behind. John Walker is what happens when you mix the pressure of a Stark-created icon with the unstable chemistry of a Stark-originated serum. From symbolic corruption, we turn to literal, street-level chaos. Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. His rise to power as the mayor of New York City, his control over a city in turmoil, is a direct result of the single most impactful event in the modern MCU, the Blip. And who engineered the Blip? Tony Stark. His snap didn't just bring everyone back, it detonated a social, economic, and psychological bomb. 5 years had passed. Societies had reformed, scarce resources had been allocated, and people had moved on. Then, in an instant, billions returned, demanding homes, jobs, and a place in a world that had functionally ended for them. Hawkeye showed us this chaos. The underground fight clubs, the desperate shortages, the rampant crime. This is the environment Kingpin survived and thrived in. He wasn't blipped. He spent those 5 years consolidating power in a broken world. When everyone returned, they returned to his city, to his systems of control. The power vacuum created by the snap wasn't a vacuum at all. It was Fisk's opportunity. The desperation of the returned population was his workforce and his customer base. Tony Stark saved the universe, but in doing so, he created the perfect breeding ground for a ruthless, consolidated criminal empire. Kingpin doesn't wield a repulsor or a serum. He wields the societal collapse that Tony's victory caused. Now we arrive at the biggest, most universe-shattering consequence of them all. The entire multiversal war, the infinite threat of Kang the Conqueror, and all his variants, exists because of Tony Stark. This isn't speculation. This is cause and effect written across the fabric of reality. Step 1. Tony Stark invented time travel. In a garage, grieving and desperate, he solved the inverted Mobius strip and made the time heist possible. This act of genius broke the sacred rules of the universe. Step 2. During that heist, the Avengers' actions created branching timelines. The most critical branch? In 2012 New York, because the Hulk, another being whose modern existence is tied to Stark Tech and Banner's collaboration with Tony, smashed through a door in anger, Loki escaped with the Tesseract. That single deviation created the branch timeline that led Loki to the TVA, to the Citadel at the end of time, and to He Who Remains. Step 3. Loki's choice to kill He Who Remains shattered the sacred timeline's control, unleashing the infinite Kang variants. Follow the chain. No Tony, no time travel. No time travel, no botched 2012 mission. No botched mission. Loki doesn't escape. Loki doesn't escape. The TVA's timeline isn't created in that way, and He Who Remains maintains control. Kang is contained. Tony Stark's greatest triumph, saving the universe, required him to break time itself. And in breaking time, he unleashed the greatest threat the multiverse will ever know. The man who wanted to put a suit of armor around the world ended up breaking the walls between worlds. And the institutions Tony built to maintain order have become his most enduring instruments of oppression. Look at the Department of Damage Control. Founded by Tony Stark after the Battle of New York to clean up superhero-related conflicts, it was meant to be his responsible solution. But just like Ultron, his creation turned against everything he supposedly stood for. By Spider-Man No Way Home, Damage Control has evolved into a weaponized, authoritarian force, hunting enhanced individuals with advanced Stark-derived technology. In Ms. Marvel, they are the government hunters, the faceless enforcers. Tony created an organization with the tools and mandate to police superhumans, and in his absence, it has become exactly the kind of oppressive system he would have railed against in his youth. It's the ultimate irony. Tony Stark, the ultimate individualist, built the infrastructure for a surveillance state that targets individuals like him. This pattern leads us inevitably to the future, to the looming shadow of Phase 6's biggest threat, Doctor Doom. While not yet realized on screen, the theories are compelling and rooted in this established Stark-centric tragedy. Possibility 1. Doom's technological empire is built on reverse-engineered Stark tech. Perhaps he scavenges from the ruins of Stark Industries or a fallen Ultron drone, using Tony's own genius as the foundation for his own conquest. Possibility 2, and more thematically resonant. Doom is a response to the incursions caused by Stark's time travel. What if Doom's homeland, Latveria, was destroyed in an incursion, a direct collision of timelines triggered by the fracturing of the multiverse that Tony initiated? In this scenario, Doom isn't just a villain. He's an avenger. a man who saw his world destroyed by the reckless heroism of the Avengers, and who now seeks to impose his own absolute order on the chaos they created. He would be the ultimate reckoning for Tony's sins. The darkest possibility? A variant of Tony Stark himself becomes Doom. A Tony from a universe where he never had his cave moment, never learned compassion, and instead used his intellect to become a supreme dictator. This would make the final villain of the multiverse saga not just an enemy, but Tony's own shadow self, the monster he always had the potential to become. We must also confront the uncomfortable counterpoint. Were these tragedies truly Tony's fault? Or was he simply the most visible link in a chain of inevitability? Could anyone else have done better? This is the essential tension in his character. His mind saw solutions no one else could conceive. The Iron Man suit, the arc reactor, time travel itself. But that same mind was plagued by anxiety, guilt, and a hubristic belief that if he could see a problem, he alone was responsible for solving it. This is the Stark singularity. He drew every crisis into his own orbit, believing his intellect could outmaneuver chaos. But chaos is not an engineering problem. You cannot protocol your way out of grief, societal collapse, or the fundamental laws of time. Tony treated the universe as a system to be debugged, and every bug fix created a more catastrophic system error. The question isn't whether the Avengers needed Tony Stark. They absolutely did. The question is whether the universe could survive the unintended consequences of Tony Stark's need to fix it. His flaw wasn't malice. It was a specific kind of genius blind spot. He could calculate the thrust needed to redirect a meteor, but he couldn't calculate the human cost of his own PTSD. He could build a time machine, but he couldn't foresee the grief of a witch whose love he had inadvertently created and doomed. This brings us to the critical concept of legacy versus intention. Tony Stark's stated intention was always, post-Afghanistan, to protect, to put a suit of armor around the world. But his legacy is one of uncontrolled proliferation. He is the Oppenheimer of the MCU. He looked into the heart of a new power, be it the arc reactor, Ultron, or time travel, and brought it into the world, hoping to control it. And like nuclear physics, that knowledge, once released, could not be contained. It spread. His technology armed Vulture's crew. His brainchild, Ultron, nearly destroyed a nation. His time travel fractured reality. His legacy is not the specific things he built for good, but the fact that the principles behind them, repulsor tech, AI, temporal mechanics, are now loose in the world, tools for anyone with the will to use them. His intention was a shield. His legacy is 1,000 sharpened swords scattered across the multiverse, waiting for the next hand to pick them up. This is why Kang is the perfect final villain for Tony's story. Kang is not a monster from the dark. He is a scholar from the future. He is what happens when a mind as brilliant and ruthless as Tony's gets access to the keys to the multiverse without any of Tony's late-blooming conscience. Kang is Tony's intellectual legacy, stripped of his heart. We also have to examine the role of the other heroes in this cycle. They were complicit. They relied on Tony. They accepted his solutions because they worked, in the moment. Captain America fought him on the Accords but used his tech without question. The Avengers went along with the time heist because Tony was the only one who could make it happen. There is a profound enabling that happens around genius. The world became dependent on Tony Stark's quick fixes, creating a systemic vulnerability. When he was gone, the systems he built, damage control, his tech in the wrong hands, were still there. But the moral compass he eventually developed was not. The other heroes are now left to fight the weeds that grew from the seeds he planted, in a garden he designed. They are perpetual cleanup crew for a visionary who never stopped to fully consider the messiness of his visions. The tragic pattern is now undeniable. Tony Stark's superpower was his intellect, but his fatal flaw was a lack of wisdom. Every single solution he engineered spawned a new, often worse, problem. He stopped making weapons, so his old weapons armed terrorists across the globe. He built a suit of armor, then an army of suits, then an intelligent global defense system, and that system became Ultron. He saved half the universe with a snap, but that snap destabilized all of society and shattered the timelines. He sacrificed himself. But his legacy, his tech, his institutions, his very inventions, continue to arm and empower the villains of tomorrow. He was a hero, yes. A complex, compelling, ultimately sacrificial hero. But he was also, directly or indirectly, the most prolific and consequential source of destruction the MCU has ever seen. He saved the universe, and in doing so, he doomed it to an endless cycle of escalating threats born from his own genius. The MCU isn't living in the aftermath of the Infinity Saga. It's living in the endless, devastating fallout of Tony Stark. And escaping his shadow may be the greatest battle the next generation of heroes will ever face.